The content of Kingdom of Healing with Kimberly Mateo, powered by 710 Radio, is intended for general information purposes only. It is not designed to provide listeners with specific and personal medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional services, or any advice. The programs are not meant to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Individuals with health problems should always consult their healthcare provider for professional medical advice, medications, and/or treatments. Kingdom of Healing also does not promote anyone's individual practices, programs, agendas, particular treatments, healthcare programs, providers, hospitals, and/or medical centers. The views expressed by show host and their guests are their own and shall not be construed in any way as advice from Kingdom of Healing. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our website. Personal perspectives expressed by the producers, writers, or editors will always be presented as such. We encourage you to always seek professional advice or care for any problems which you may have. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to the Kingdom of Healing or 710 Radio or the show hosts whose words and or opinions appear from or on this radio show.
Live on iHeartRadio, powered by 710 Radio. This is the Kingdom of Healing with Kimberly Mateo. So grab you a pen and a paper, kick your feet up, and get ready for some serious knowledge to be dropped on you. Because Kimberly Mateo is a nationally certified naturopath, master herbalist, iridologist, a nutritionist, and a holistic healer since 1977. She shares 35 plus years of knowledge and experience to listeners who are interested in learning and overcoming health challenges naturally. So without further delay, here is the host of your show, Kimberly Mateo.
Hi, welcome back. Thank you for joining me today on Kingdom of Healing. This is Kimberly Mateo, and I'm a traditional naturopath, and I've been into alternative healing for around 38 years now. So I hope that what I share will help you and your family overcome any health challenges that you're dealing with. Today I want to talk about some of the amount of studies that are published on Pubmed.org. And there's a variety of different herbs and vitamins, minerals that are studied and peer-reviewed, and you can pretty much just in the search engine put in anything you want, whether it's herbs or other nutrients. And if there's a study on it that's been published and reviewed, then you'll find it there on PubMed. And, there's so much talk, about curcumin, turmeric. If you haven't heard about it, it's amazing if you haven't, because it's pretty much the talk, and it's extremely amazing. And there's also some talk amongst herbalists that when the three wise men brought gold, frankincense, and myrrh to the baby Jesus, that there's some talk that the gold was not gold, that it was turmeric, which is where the property curcumin is found. A lot of research into what curcumin has a very powerful antioxidant, what it has the ability to do with reprogramming cancer cells, and it reprograms them to cell death.
Very interesting.
So that is what the research is showing and proving over and over and over, because on turmeric and curcumin, there is currently 7,839 studies that are published.
That's quite a bit.
And of these studies, there's 2,966 studies that have been published on curcumin and cancer alone.
Wow.
There's 2,966 published studies of the 7,839 overall studies.
Very interesting.
So just shy of 3,000 of those is just on what it does from a standpoint of the pathways that it takes to shut down abnormal cells in the body. There are, there's 834 studies that are just on learning and memory, inflammation, mood disorders. So there's 834. There's 357 studies on breast cancer, colon cancer. 800 studies on curcumin and its benefits in the cases of liver cancer.
Wow.
800 studies. In the 834 studies on the learning and memory, that also brings in Alzheimer's, diabetes, arthritis, lung problems, all neurological and brain problems. So 834 total under that memory, learning and memory and inflammation category. So it's quite a few. 237 alone on the prostate. On antioxidants, there's 2,249 studies. So this is at this point at 7,839 studies. It's I think the jury's in on the benefits, and turmeric has a really nice flavor to it. I would recommend you buying non-GMO organic turmeric, and it's a very reasonably priced spice. And start adding that into your diet. Keep it at the kitchen table. Put a sprinkling of it over your food. With that as well, you can put a light sprinkling of cayenne pepper over your food too. That's another good place for the cayenne pepper, is right at the table, because of the benefits of the circulatory system and balancing blood pressure and stuff like that. That cayenne is really good to have, just a little light sprinkling. But turmeric is also extremely inexpensive, and the property curcumin is what occurs naturally in that turmeric. If you get in, say, your average adult, if you can get in a teaspoon of it a day, it doesn't taste bad. You can take a half a teaspoon of that and mix that into a little bit of water and swallow it down. Take it like that twice a day and make sure you're getting enough in your body. What the curcumin does is the reason that it's an anti-cancer is it works in multiple phases. And when you look at the human body, it consists of 10 to 13 trillion cells. And almost all of these cells are turned over and replaced. They're renewed every 100 days. So, really, we have the potential, if we're extremely meticulous about what we're doing. It's stated that you can be a new person in 3 months. Wow. With replacing tissue with 10 to 13 trillion cells, replacing themselves every 100 days. A trillion, you stop and think about a trillion cells. And when I did it on leaky gut and on the intestinal tract, the immune system, I talked about the microbes in the intestinal tract and all the good bacteria. And there's more microbes of good bacteria in the immune system than there is in even the 10 to 13 trillion cells that we have in the rest of the body.
Wow.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, when you think about
it's really incredible, and I talked about that in the I think that was the immune system the immune system show, I talked about that. With 100 billion cells being replaced daily, that would make that 100 billion cells are needing to be replaced daily in the human body. So if at 100 days 10 to 13 trillion cells are replaced, for every 1 trillion, a trillion is a billion million. A billion million. That's incredible. So there's 100 billion every day that need to be replaced. And many of the pathways that curcumin takes is it causes apoptosis, which is cell death. Cancer cells, they overstay their welcome. They seem to shut off. They have, the gene shuts off the suicide gene. That's what they seem to do, is they shut off their suicide gene. And what curcumin does is it opens up a pathway, and a variety of different pathways, to cause this apoptosis. And it's the variety of different pathways that it can take that you do not build a resistance up to using it.
Okay.
So curcumin and turmeric is something that you can take daily, day in, day out. And like I said, it does not taste bad. And it's wonderful to put it in rice. So, there's a lot of recipes you can do with turmeric, but the thing is just a half a teaspoon of it, a quarter of a teaspoon for a child, daily, a couple times a day.
Okay.
So, and it's doable, but one of the pathways is called FAS. It's a pathway directly to the death receptors, which are receptor 4 and 5. This FADD activates these receptors. There's a receptor 8, and what that does is it activates it, literally, this curcumin, to become a death machine.
Very
a death
interesting.
machine. Towards killing abnormal cells in the body. So I can't encourage you enough, the listeners out there, to buy some organic turmeric and get that in your home. Start using it. It's inexpensive. Some of the most studied nutritional factors have been the EGCGs from green tea. We hear so much, and there's so much published on it as well, on how it's extremely beneficial in using that with any type of, candida, the fungus problems, cancer problems, anytime that a gene is misbehaving, anytime that the bacteria is out of balance, because the EGCGs from green tea also help with the gut. The other nutrient with a lot of published studies is resveratrol that comes from grapes.
Oh, okay.
And you always hear about, how the French, they have this really high-fat diet, and they drink a lot of wine. Right. And their heart disease is very, very low. And that's where right now, there's a lot of different diets out there. And for people who have a lot of sensitivities and are gluten intolerant and are also O blood types, if they are... Okay, so the diet for insulin resistance as well, that ketogenic diet, where that is real high fat, and a lot of leafy greens, and lean meat, grass-fed, wild-caught fish, that is it's a very good diet right now. But you look at that diet and it seems weird with all of the fat, but you really need fat in order to break down fat, and a lot of times a lot of the toxins and the environmental things that you just breathe in and filter through the body, they go to fat cells. And so there's research there that this is why it can become difficult with losing the fat, and in order to do that you're going to need to increase the fat in your diet, but it's got to be good fat. So coconut oil is probably going to come up as number 4 runner with some of these studies, the EGCGs from green tea, the resveratrol from grapes, curcumin from turmeric. Those are the 3 most studied and published nutrients, and I really do think that coconut oil is going to come up with it. There's just so much information now. Where the curcumin fits in is in the cancer cell. Curcumin, it's the pigment in the turmeric that specific pigment. What it does is it upregulates and activates those death receptors. So that's where it starts that pathway of the FAS with the path receptors of receptor 4 and 5, and gets that process started and going in order for that abnormal cell to self-destruct. And it's been also demonstrated in human kidney cells as well, skin cells, throat cells. So by drinking it, if you have any types of problems with, if you have problems with the mouth, maybe you have some gum disease, gingivitis, which is an inflammation in the gums, you can swish that around in your mouth for a couple of minutes. You could clean the mouth out and literally, then just don't swallow that, spit that out, but don't swallow it, and then follow with that half a teaspoon twice a day of curcumin. It also activates the death machine directly, as in any kind of lung tissue abnormalities, colon. When activated, it destroys the cancer cells from within. So there's the 2,966 studies. There's studies concerning skin disorders. There's 78 studies alone just on depression, how it actually enhances the efficacy of antidepressants. So if someone's on an antidepressant, curcumin would not be contraindicated. Okay, so it would be something that would be very good to enhance how effective that will be. Curcumin is extremely beneficial with neurological disorders, anxiety. It helps also with glutathione for neuroimmune disorders. And the immune system does have, it does have an immune system, so how it interacts directly with the immune system is really incredible. And so irritable bowel syndrome, leaky gut, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. I've talked a lot about leaky gut syndrome, leaky bowel syndrome, irritable bowel syndrome. There's a lot right there where the gluten has created such a problem, and the high fructose corn syrup creating such a problem of inflammation and irritation that there's literally holes throughout your large intestine, and that seeps out into the tissue, and it is the leading cause and root cause of these autoimmune diseases. So I talked a little earlier about the Alzheimer's and diabetes and learning and memory problems. Go to pubmed.org and just type in curcumin and look at some of these studies. It's really incredible, the amount of studies that have been done. The turmeric may be the world's most important herb. Going back to that, bringing the three wise men, bringing the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Frankincense, there's numerous studies on frankincense and myrrh. And when using essential oils, it's always best to dilute that with a carrier oil, a quality carrier oil. I just prefer to mix it up into coconut oil because I always have plenty of it on hand. And that would be like, at a 10% solution, you would be 1 teaspoon of an essential oil in 3 tablespoons of coconut oil, and mix that up, and then apply that to the feet or over, if there's a particular area of the body where you're having, there's inflammation or pain in the muscle below or the organ below. Use the essential oils topically there above that organ or muscle. Just put it on the skin, and it's absorbed and into the bloodstream within 3 minutes. So I would encourage you to look up some of the research on that. And frankincense has been proven to, what it does is it corrects the DNA of the cell. So there's some research there that by applying that to the body, there's a lot of healing that takes care of the DNA, because our DNA becomes damaged just by the air and the preservatives and just the other chemicals and stuff that we end up breathing in and ingesting. It's very important to go ahead and look some of that stuff up. It's very easy to find it. Curcumin has been shown to have the effects they're selective. Pawpaw, that's an herb I've talked about before, the pawpaw cell rag, and the curcumin, the pawpaw cell rag, the essential oils, those can be found on kingdomofhealing.com, and you can just go to the search bar in the upper right side on the home page and just type those things in, and it will bring you to the product. But curcumin is selective on shutting down and killing cells, and pawpaw is the same way. And what pawpaw does is it shuts down the energy producing part of the cell that fuels and feeds an abnormal cell. And then, of course, before I've talked about the sugar situations, and we talked about the left rotary and the right rotary sugars, and the left rotary or the left spin sugars, that's pure maple syrup. It is like organic cane sugar, non-GMO, honey, stevia. Those things are good sugars, and the sugar that occurs naturally from the fruit and the vegetables, the root vegetables. But the thing is not by adding fructose, processed fructose that you can buy in a bag. Don't use that. You go with what's naturally occurring in the fruit. So that's a safe sugar. Right rotary sugars are white sugar. They're beets. Beets are pretty much all GMO. So all that white sugar on the shelf at the store, it's GMO, and it's cooked at 2,000 degrees, and so it's toast. It has no nutrients in it at all. That's a right spin sugar that feeds abnormal cells. It feeds fungus, which that fungus with that candida albicans, that ketogenic diet, people do very, very well who have candida. That fungus the sugar causes such an overgrowth. And then you've got the high fructose corn syrup. That actually triggers you to feel that you need sweets all the time, and that you're always hungry. So That's corn syrup is a right spin sugar. So those are the things that feed abnormal cells. And curcumin, curcumin shuts, pawpaw shuts that down. Curcumin shuts that down. So if it is something like that you're dealing with from a health challenge standpoint, then you not only need curcumin specifically into your diet, but it would be of benefit to you to add the pawpaw as well, and always a good diet. So the it also has great effect on the endothelial cells, and that's the cells between the blood vessels and the lymphatic vessels. And then there's lymphocytes and the hepatocytes, fibroblasts. There's mammary gland epithelial cells. The epithelial cells are where the cells are densely packed, and so in the mammary glands. So the pathways that curcumin takes in shutting down abnormal cells, there's research that's been published on studies that involve, these areas that I just mentioned. So curry is also in that family. Active property of curry is the antioxidant, everything that occurs with the curcumin. So curry is another one, and you see curry in a lot of East Indian,
Right.
a lot of East Indian food. So there's no resistance buildup to curcumin, and that's because, like I said before, it has to do with the numerous mechanisms of cell death pathways that it takes. So it's beneficial for all imbalances, and it's so good for pain and inflammation that it's something that can replace taking and going after the ibuprofen all the time. And there's research back with that leaky gut, that irritable bowel. There's studies where they found that ibuprofen is an aid in developing the causes of leaky gut syndrome. So the causes would be it would be making the holes, making all those little perforations throughout the large intestines, where then everything is breaking down through the digestive tract, it is starting to, it weeps and it seeps through those little holes, and they make their way into the abdominal cavity. And then you're dealing with endothelial cells in the abdominal cavity that have abnormal growth going on. So curry as well, you can add that into your spice rack and just pick it up non-GMO and organically grown. And it's another one that is extremely reasonable on what it costs as well. Judging by the extreme reasonable cost of those herbs, it is really important that people have them standard and always there in your herb cabinet. There's a few other things that I want to just mention, and they have to do with some of the harmful foods. And we see a lot of this low-fat stuff. And at first, when they came out with that Olestra, it took a while before you started hearing about the reviews and the studies on it. It wasn't good at all. It's probably one of the most harmful foods next to microwaved, genetically modified popcorn, which is not a good food.
Right.
It's not a good snack. It's not good at all. So, but neither is this Olestra. And it's worse than gluten. It's worse than gluten. And look at everything out there with gluten intolerance. And really, there's a whole lot more people than you realize that they absolutely are gluten intolerant when you get into digging into the research about it. But it's now they've renamed it Olean, Olean,
Not
So
sure
that
if
when
I've heard of it yet.
yeah, so that when you're reading the ingredients on the side of a package, and you see Olean, it sounds fairly healthy to the average person. If it's not something that, well, I don't know what that is, but it says Olean, so it must be good. Well, it's not. It's the new name for the Olestra. And Olestra, it's in a lot of products for children.
Well, right now, labeling is getting kind of scary because there's a couple of things that Congress went ahead and approved country of origin on the printing of the meat labels. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Wait, did they stop that? Or are they not?
Yeah, they're not going to label it.
Oh, they're not going to label it. Well, see, and we've got our chickens. Did you hear about that? With the chickens are they're being killed in the United States, and then they're being shipped over to China to be processed, and then they're shipping them back to us. And it's like, why would we do that when they don't have USDA inspections like we do? And stop and think about, like I've talked about before in past shows, the vaccines. 85% of the vaccines, they're made in communist China. An FDA agent can only go over once every 7 years, and they don't even get to go inside. They're just told, "Yep, it's all good. Everything's good. It's not a problem," and then they leave. This is crazy.
Well, I got a little story here because sometime last week, we had a church's chicken that was being built just right up the road from us, right?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, right on, I mean, about time we got someplace like that close, because I love chicken,
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's... Okay, so finally opened, went, grabbed a meal like we would at KFC if we were to go there, but...
KFC.
Now,
the
we brought it
chickens.
home and started eating that chicken, and I swear to you, they sent pieces of chicken that I was like, what part of the fucking chicken is this? I mean, excuse me, but I've never seen pieces like that. I was like, wait a minute, what part of the chicken could this possibly have been from?
Huh.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah, when you can't. It's like a thing that...
No, because there was no identifying. I know my chicken.
There was something sent to me, and in my email back in probably 2007, and it was on the poo-poo platters, that you get at a Chinese restaurant.
Uh-huh.
It was pretty scary. It was rats. And they had these little, the tanks, the little blowtorch, and they were burning all the hair off of them. And then, then the way that they cut them, and then they showed what the cut looked like. And I about had a heart attack. I've never ordered another one of those platters since. Because I used to think, oh, the poor baby chicken. I mean, this was...
eating rat.
Yeah, and it's like, I think this might be accurate here. Yeah, none of that anymore.
Wow.
So, yeah. But, okay, so the one thing that this Olestra does, and with it being put into a lot of products that are marketed and directed at children, it inhibits the body's ability to absorb the fat-soluble vitamins, this Olean. So it inhibits vitamin A. You know, vitamin A is needed for the eyes and
Right.
and the liver. D, the bones, the teeth, the skin, everything works with calcium. No calcium, you're not building nothing in your body if you lack calcium. Vitamin E, fat soluble. We need it for the blood. We need it for the immune system. It's an antioxidant. A is an antioxidant. Beta-carotene comes from A. Vitamin K, it's your ability for blood clotting. You get cut, you want your blood to clot. You have a problem with vitamin K, you're not clotting. Okay, hemophiliacs have a problem with vitamin K. Wow. So that's why their blood doesn't clot. So this olein is not an ingredient that you want to be finding when you're reading over the list on the foods that you're buying. And really, I've said it before, and we really need to eat as simply as we can. The less complicated we make it, a lean meat, couple of vegetables, grain if you're able to tolerate them. And there's also some talk, that I've listened to on promoting, having fruit after a meal. Don't eat fruit after your meal. Certain foods take a certain amount of time to digest. Fruit does not take very long to digest. It takes longer to digest. Your proteins take the longest. So if you're going to have fruit, you want, and it's, you're somewhere where there's a layout of food. You have the fruit first, and then have the vegetables and the protein. You want the fruit down there first, because it's going to digest the quickest.
Well, that makes sense.
Otherwise, the sugar in that fruit on top of a heavy meal is just going to sit there, and it's going to ferment at 98.6 degrees.
So you're making alcohol in
You're
your belly.
making alcohol. Yes, and that's why you look around and everybody's laying around sleeping. little homemade alcohol there through the improper digestion process in the way that you layered the foods in there. So go for the fruit first. Otherwise, you need to wait a couple of hours before you have fruit. Give it a chance to get most of it out of there. Another thing that's been to children, and are these yogurts that have so much sugar in them. And the ones that come in the packages that are easy for children to take along and pack in their lunchbox, and they don't need a spoon. They're sealed in packages. Those yogurts, they have 2 times more sugar than Lucky Charms cereal. It's not a good food. It really isn't, and it is in the category of the most harmful foods that we can eat.
Wow.
So the other thing too is the strains of bacteria in yogurts. There's really not enough. We need to, if you're taking in something, probiotics, you really need something that has like 10 different strains to it and has 1 billion at least of each strain. So I use a lot of times, the product that I use the most of is the Probiotic 11 that you can find on kingdomofhealing.com, and just put Probiotic 11 in that search bar and it'll bring that up. And 4 of those for an adult, 4 of those before you go to bed. And just take that down with about a half a glass of water. Don't take probiotics during the daytime. Take them at bedtime when you're not consuming any more food or fluids, and you allow enough time for that to break down and colonize and start culturing in in the intestinal tract. So 4 of them, probiotic 11, 4 for an adult before bed, and 2 for a child. And if you've had to be on any antibiotics, then absolutely. And do that for 3 to 4 months straight. And it's just a good idea that every year, at least for 3 months, you go through consistently doing something like probiotic 11 at bedtime, and doing that for 3 to 4 months. Wheat bread, there is so much gluten protein in the wheat bread, we were not designed to break it down, and here lies the problem. We can't digest it. We just can't digest it, and it creates such havoc and distress in the gut with our digestive enzyme levels that the gut just it can't handle it. And there's so much it's so much more addicting due to it being genetically modified. Those chemicals, our body, just like with if you eat a lot of it's hard to get off of candies and stuff like that if you've had a problem with those because of the high fructose corn syrup being so addictive.
Right.
It's hard to give up the foods that contain the high fructose corn syrup because of the addiction to it. The same with unknown substances in wheat bread that can help to convert to fat, these unknown substances. And it goes back to the research that they're finding now with just from the chemicals, the toxins we breathe in and in the water and food and what's allowed to be put on the food. All of these toxins, when these are brought into the body creates more fat to protect them, is what it can do.
Wow.
So a lot of times cleanses are real, cleansing is popular, but you have to be careful and give the body a rest. You can't go on a cleanse for, 2 or 3 months. You cleanse everything out, you'd be pretty sick. But cleanses, it's good to start like a 10-day cleanse. Do a couple of 10-day cleanses off and on. Then you can do something like a 2-week cleanse. You don't want to pull that stuff off too much and end up getting sick. So another thing that is not a good food, and it's really marketed again and targeted to children, are all these different cereal bars.
Okay.
They're full of. You look at the ingredients on them, and within the first 3 ingredients is corn syrup, which is the high fructose corn syrup. You'll find some of them that'll have 3-4 different kinds of sugar in it. They'll have the corn syrup, and then they'll have cane sugar syrup, molasses. Of course, molasses is a left spin sugar. That's good. So is non-GMO organic cane sugar. That's also left spin, rotary. That's good. That feeds the cell. But the high fructose corn syrup doesn't. That's the right spin. So they've got some good stuff thrown in with some bad stuff, and due to the labeling laws that have been in place, that were changed and put in place about 30 years ago, hey, you have some good stuff in there. That's how they're able to have all natural on the label.
Right.
5% organic matter, and you have an all-natural label. So you do have to be a label reader.
Oh, yes.
And you think, oh, well, I'll get, instead of this candy bar over here, I'll buy my child or myself this snack over here that's with the health food items, even the health food item bars and stuff like that. There's there's a lot of them as well that you don't need to be consuming. So what a lot of these things create, the wheat, we already know with the inflammation that it creates due to the digestive tract not being able to properly break it down because it's a hybrid and it has such higher levels, unrealistic levels of gluten in it that we can't break down. It causes the inflammation, which causes the perforations, and then we have high fructose corn syrup in so many foods that what ends up happening is that itself creates blood sugar imbalances, creates inflammation in the body as well, and leads to, this inflammation and blood sugar levels out leads to blood sugar problems with hypoglycemia. And when you're hypoglycemic long enough, you're hypoglycemic usually first before your hyperglycemia, which is diabetes, mellitus type 2. So which is different than type 1. It's said that type 1, there's a lot of research coming in that, yes, it's genetic. It's also something that it is being looked at it's autoimmune. It's an autoimmune disease, is diabetes type 1. And, both of them ultimately end up being that way anyway because of all of the inflammation factors. And this combination of this wheat in everything and hiding and lurking in everything, and yes, your average consumer is getting a lot smarter, and so they're throwing things in like Olestra is now Olean. High fructose corn syrup is blended with things that are good, honey and molasses and cane sugar or syrup. But what happens with the regular ingestion of these things, it creates the food sensitivities, the bloating and the gas that leads to depression. It's one of the main culprits for the cause of lactose intolerance. So it's important to make sure that you have enough enzymes. And I've always told people over the years when you're working with people that if they really can't afford to get on anything, you need to take care of their digestion. The next thing that you would take care of is their elimination. The next thing you would take care of is their nervous system. If you're cooking and using coconut oil, you're taking care of a lot of good things for your central nervous system. If you're adding curry and turmeric into your diet, you're taking care of your central nervous system as well as helping the bad effects, the oxidation effects that take place when you're just exposed to the things that you can't control, right, like breathing and what's in the air. So those are things that are important to add into your diet. The enzymes are so important because the bromelain breaks down the fat. The lipase breaks down the fat. Bromelain, breaks down the protein. Amylase helps with the conversion of carbohydrates to a usable glucose in the body. So, and prevents that from breaking down, from converting a carbohydrate and going right to fat. For people who are carbohydrate intolerant, that do not digest them well, you need more amylase in your diet to break down the carbohydrates and the lipase to break down the fat. So, a product that I use a lot with people is the food enzymes. They are able to one capsule will digest down 35 grams of carbohydrates, 35 grams of fat, and 20 grams of protein. So you really shouldn't be eating more than that at a meal, But there's carbohydrate meals that, yeah, you just looking at them, it's like, yeah, it's about 300 carbs. Yeah, so, that's when you're going to need to take 4 or 5, if you have a really big meal like that. And just the enzymes, kind of like the fruit that I was talking about. Don't eat your fruit last because, it breaks down and it converts to it ferments and converts to alcohol. So you don't want to do that with food enzymes either. You need to take your enzymes before you eat. Have them in the stomach and ready to take care of aiding digesting whatever it is you're going to eat. So the preservatives in a lot of these foods, these preservatives, what they do is they inhibit bacteria. So by their ability to inhibit bacteria, they also, when you ingest them, what they do by inhibiting bacteria is they destroy your good bacteria in your gut. So there's another reason that you don't want preservatives in your diet, because of their ability to inhibit bacteria. And then that weakens your immune system. So that is, another reason why, before you know it, you'll end up with a lot of gut issues, digestion and elimination. It's also, it creates so much inflammation that, you start developing, setting yourself up for cardiology problems due to the inflammation. The imbalance of the candida in the intestinal gut, the overgrowth of fungus that takes place and mimics a lot of hormones and mimics a lot of diseases. And that candida fungus can, make its way into the bloodstream, and then it makes its way to the brain. And you have memory problems and brain fog. You can't seem to get woke up. It takes forever to wake up. Your brain feels just, you can't get with the program. Your brain doesn't seem to want to wake up. Foggy thinker, forgetfulness, can't remember. That can be a sign also of candida overgrowth that's made its way to the bloodstream, that by way of the bloodstream has made its way across the blood-brain barrier and is affecting the brain. Another sign that you have some digestive problems that are more than likely triggered by some food sensitivities is too many trips to the bathroom. A lot of frequency to the bathroom really denotes that there is some digestive problems, and it is important to maybe take a look at colitis, irritable bowel syndrome. And if you've got irritable bowel syndrome, you're dealing with leaky gut. And a lot of stress can create a very acid pH in the body. And when you have that high acid pH in the body, it gives the high acid levels. If you have a higher alkaline level, you don't have these problems in the body of a lot of inflammations and pain and illness. If your pH level is low and it's acidic, then there's the terrain that is the environment that abnormal cells and fungus overgrowth, and these are the things that bacteria and viruses have an opportunity to live and to multiply and weaken and to weaken your health. So it slows down metabolism when we're overwhelmed with all of those toxins. And being overwhelmed with a lot of these things that have been in the diet that create the cravings of them. Sometimes if you're allergic to a certain food, you'll crave it.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. And Dr. Christopher would take people who were allergic to things and feed them a lot of it and work them through their reaction to it and bring them through it. But I wouldn't be willing to take the risk on doing that, because we live in such a toxic environment that there is too much now that we've been exposed to, that some type of a serious allergic reaction can trigger maybe a reaction with those as well. And so I think it's a different breed of cat, so to speak, today than it was 50, 60, 70 years ago.
Oh, sure.
When he was practicing. Gut health is so important. It's so important. That's that probiotic 11. And there's 11 strains. You really need to do 10 of them daily. So the 11 is great, and they need to be, so 10 strains, you need to have at least 10 billion, and you'll find that excess in the probiotic 11. So, again, to remember that candida, sugar feeds it, it spills everywhere in the system. Those particles, they make it into the blood. They mimic the hormones, cravings. You'll be craving foods that have the high fructose corn syrup, because it really is able to proliferate itself and grow with the high fructose corn syrup. Clogs up the system. It just interferes with the good bacteria. It gets, that balance gets so out of balance that you need to replace those good strains. So the other thing that really hurts the digestive tract is overeating. And so anything that your body does not need in way of when you're consuming a meal, anything that your body doesn't immediately use for energy, it's stored to fat. 5-HTP is something else that can be added, 200 milligrams a day for at least 200 milligrams a day. And there's some studies that in a 10-week period of time, those who consumed 200 milligrams of 5-HTP, at least 35 milligrams before a meal, 200 milligrams daily over a period of 12 weeks, everyone on the average had lost 10 pounds. So it reduces, 5-HTP reduces hunger, and it prevents emotional eaters. Emotional eating. It also increases the serotonin. So for those who know that they're dealing with some depression, but they don't want to do the antidepressants, 5-HTP is something that would be beneficial because of the research studies that they have, that it does increase the serotonin levels. So it also reduces stress, and it helps to take care of people who are really angry, just angry all the time. And that is someone who has issues with their liver.
Interesting.
You've got people who are bad attitude and always angry. They've got some liver stuff going on. So 5-HTP greatly reduces stress, and by reducing stress, it's going to reduce the stress on the liver.
Right.
So when the liver is constantly overwhelmed all the time and constantly trying to, it does over 500 functions, the liver.
Wow.
Over 500. So it's really important that it be functioning as well as it can. And look at it all. Look at all the hepatitis C.
Right.
Look at everything that, through having that disease, creates problems of cirrhosis and fatty liver, and all of those things greatly, grossly interfere with the functions that the liver is able to do. It certainly can't perform its 500 with those things going on. So 5-HTP is something that's really good. Green tea, that's easy enough. Buy some non-GMO organic green tea bags and make yourself a quart of green tea a day. It's pretty benign in its flavor, and it doesn't have a strong, pungent flavor to it. That's something that would be really good to do. It boosts the metabolism. It also strengthens the digestive system. So green tea is something that, if you've got a favorite tea that is flavored, you can still use green tea as its base. You can find what I've talked about on kingdomofhealing.com and type that into that the search bar on the upper right side of the page, and you'll be able to locate what you're looking for. That's it for today, and talk to you next week, and be safe and God bless.